Close your eyes and picture a country celebrating. Fireworks on TV. Politicians smiling. Headlines shouting, GDP up 7%. Now open your eyes. Behind the celebration, something quieter is happening. No cameras, no speeches. The country is working harder, just to stand still. Because the number everyone is cheering is not the number that decides whether an economy survives. There's another metric, less famous, less glamorous. And it decides who stays rich, who falls behind, and who eventually breaks. Let's talk about it. Right now, GDP is treated like the scoreboard of the world. If it's rising, we assume things are fine. If it's falling, we panic. But GDP only tells you how fast the engine is spinning. It doesn't tell you how much fuel is leaking. And in today's global economy, leaks matter more than speed. Here's why this topic matters now. Over the last 20 years, governments didn't just grow their economies. They borrowed. A lot. Cheap money made borrowing feel painless. Interest rates near zero. Debt rolled over easily. Nobody asked uncomfortable questions. GDP grew. Debt grew faster. And for a long time, that didn't seem to matter. Until interest rates woke up. Now suddenly, the math everyone ignored is doing the talking. To understand the real metric, we need to strip this system down to its bones. Forget economics textbooks. Forget complicated charts. Imagine your household. You earn 100 rupees. You borrow 1,000 rupees at low interest. As long as your income grows faster than your interest bill, you're fine. But if interest rises, or your income slows, you don't collapse immediately. You just start losing room to breathe. That breathing room is the entire game. For countries, that breathing room comes down to one relationship. How fast your economy grows versus how expensive your debt becomes. Economists call it R minus G. But that sounds academic. So let's say it plainly. A country can post strong GDP numbers and still be sliding toward a debt trap. Part 5. Because GDP doesn't pay the bills, cash does. Let's put numbers on it. Imagine a country with 100 trillion in debt. Interest rate 5%. That's 5 trillion every year just to service the debt. Now GDP grows 6%. Sounds healthy. But if inflation-adjusted growth is only 2% and interest resets to 7%. Part 5. That 5 trillion becomes 7 trillion. Next year, more. Then more again. Nothing breaks immediately. Part 5. Budgets tighten. Taxes creep up. Spending shifts quietly. Part 5. Infrastructure delays. Welfare gets trimmed. Defense gets postponed. GDP might still grow, but flexibility dies. Part 5. This is where the illusion lives. We are trained to ask, is GDP growing? Part 5. We should be asking, how expensive is survival? Because governments don't default when GDP slows. They default when cash flows fail. Now here's where it gets awkward. Some of the most powerful economies in the world are running on negative breathing room. Their interest burden is growing faster than their economies. They're not collapsing. They're adapting by issuing more debt to pay interest on old debt. That sounds extreme. It's also normal now. This is where irony sneaks in. The stronger your reputation, the longer you can play this game. Markets trust you, so they lend more, which delays the consequences. Weak countries don't get that luxury. They hit the wall faster. Same math, different timelines. GDP doesn't capture that difference. This is where irony sneaks in. The stronger your reputation, the longer you can play this game. Markets trust you, so they lend more, which delays the consequences. Weak countries don't get that luxury. They hit the wall faster. Same math, different timelines. GDP doesn't capture that difference. This metric does, and it changes behavior. When interest eats more of the budget, policy stops being ambitious. Governments stop asking, what should we build? They start asking, what can we afford not to cancel? That's not a growth mindset. That's survival mode. Now, let's talk hype versus reality. Every growth forecast assumes one thing quietly, that rates will behave. But interest rates don't care about optimism. They respond to inflation, credibility, and fear. If investors start demanding higher returns, the math flips instantly. No vote required. No announcement, just a repricing. This is why central banks matter more than finance ministers now. They don't just fight inflation. They decide whether the debt math stays friendly. Low rates aren't a stimulus anymore. They're life support. What people miss is that businesses fail debt-funded. If growth itself is debt-funded, that's like paying one credit card with another. It works until it doesn't. This is why some countries with modest GDP growth are actually healthier than fast-growing ones drowning in interest. Stability beats speed when debt is high. Now, zoom out. What does this mean for the future? It means the next decade won't be defined by who grows fastest. It'll be defined by who controls their interest burden. Who locks in long-term rates? Who keeps credibility? Who avoids panic? GDP will still make headlines, but this quieter metric will decide policy, power, and pain. And the scariest part: most voters never hear about it. You don't campaign on debt servicing costs. You campaign on growth, which means the pressure builds silently until choices disappear. Here's the thought to leave you with. The last era rewarded expansion. The next one will reward endurance. And when the celebrations start over a shiny GDP number, the real question won't be how fast the economy is growing. It'll be this: is it growing faster than the bill for staying alive? Because if the answer is no, the party is already over. We just haven't turned the lights on yet.